Okay, so today we'll go through how to create a proper tower defense enemy system with waypoint based movement and wave system and wave managers. This is how it will look in the end. You will have proper waves and proper wave manager. So yeah, let's dive right in. So first thing first, we have this beautiful setup. All the assets used are in the description. So first let's just lay down a path for our enemy ships to follow, and we will have the renderer so that we can visualize the path, and the volcano island will be our our primary base, and the start point can be anywhere, but we will just keep it there. So yeah, let's make a parent game object for all our waypoints to keep the hierarchy clean. Alright, and there we go. Now that we have a path for our ship, let's go get our ship. So this is the model I'm gonna use, again link in the description, and we can just keep it here. And as you can see, it doesn't have the Unity's axis format, which is Z axis for front and Y for top. So yeah, let's put our model in an empty and rotate it so it faces the correct way. Now let's scale it down a bit so it's in proportion with the rest of our scene, and there we go. So yeah, it's time to do some programming. So let's create a C# script and open it up in Visual Studio. Now the entire code will be in Git, so I'm just gonna explain what this code does. So what do we exactly want from our ship or our enemy script is to basically rotate towards our waypoint, which the waypoint that we want to go towards, and then simply move towards that waypoint over some speed or some rotation speed. So once we reach that waypoint, we simply want to go to the next point, and then simply the next waypoint, and then so on until we reaches the last one. And when we reach the last waypoint, we simply just wanna, for now, we will just destroy our ship. We will do the rest of the stuff later. So let's look at the variables. These are the speed and rotation speed variables. These are like these are the values that we can change in the entire script. And the rest of the elements, they are mostly just mostly private, but I have kept them public just so that you can see it. Okay, so the most important part of this script is probably this method. This is the move towards method, which basically rotates, which basically takes care of the rotation and moving towards that waypoint. It takes a target, which is of course our transform waypoint. Here it is. The way how we assign these, we'll get to that in a bit, but first let's look at the move towards method. Okay, so first thing first, we calculate the direction from this object to the target, which basically means we calculate the direction from our ship, from our enemy ship to the target. The target here of course is the waypoint. So this basically creates a direction, like for example the ship is here and then and our target is there. It just creates a direction vector towards that. Then we need to convert the vector into a quaternion to represent the rotation needed to point the object, which is of course our waypoint, in the direction which we have just made. So it just basically converts the vector into a quaternion. So we can use quaternion.look rotation to do this. And then we just use quaternion.slurp to smoothly rotate our ship towards the waypoint. And then we simply just move the ship towards our direction, which means the initial direction. Like for example, the ship is here and the direction is there, so the ship will just move towards that. Next thing, like say we have reached a waypoint, like using this method we have reached a certain waypoint. What happens after that? Because we want the ship to simply go towards the next waypoint, right? So in order to do that, we need to know the distance between our ship and the current waypoint that we have, and we find that using this. It basically just returns the distance between two vectors. So transform.position, which is our ship's vector, and the current waypoint.position, which is the waypoint's vector. And we simply just check if it's less than 0.1. This is an arbitrary value. We simply just increase the index, and then we assign that index to our current waypoint. And yeah, that's basically it. The rest of the stuff here is mostly just for error handling, and I'm gonna leave it to you. Lastly, as you can see, once the distance to our waypoint gets less than 0.1 and the current waypoint is equal to waypoints.length -1, which basically refers that it's the last waypoint. This basically refers to as the last waypoint. We simply just currently do this function, which currently just destroys our game object, but later we can actually just apply some damage to the base once we actually have that script. So yeah, that's about it. Let's head back to Unity. Okay, let's drag and drop our enemy movement to our ship, and let's drag and drop all the waypoints that we have. So yeah, let's just do that. There we go. Now all we need is to assign the speed and rotation speed. So yeah, let's just again keep this as some arbitrary numbers. And yes, as you can see, our ship follows our waypoints, and once we get close to one waypoint, it simply just goes to the next one. Again, you're gonna have to change the speed and the rotation speed accordingly. So yeah, it works well. Okay, now let's create another script for the waves. Alright, so here's our wave script. So again, as you can see, we have the waypoints transform array here as well, because well, once we instantiate our ship, we can't just assign the waypoints like altogether. So yeah, we're gonna do that from the wave script itself, and that's the entire reason why I told you like we don't have to assign it from here. So yeah, then you can see we have an array of game object. The reason, because well, since we can have multiple different ships, like as you can see in here, when we actually instantiate, we just take a random number from the number of enemies that we have, and we can just instantiate some, like any one of them. So it's like a good randomizer to have. Okay, then comes the number of enemies. That means the number of enemies that will be spawned in the wave, the spawn interval, of course the time between the spawns. Then the spawn timer. This can be a private thing, but I've kept this public just so that we can see how this works. Then we have the number of enemies spawned. Again, this can also be private. Wave active. Again, this can also be private, but again, we are gonna keep these things as public just so that we can see. Don't worry about this one. Okay, so in the starting, we just have a separate start function. The reason why we have a separate function is that we are actually gonna call this from a separate manager, like the wave manager. This is just a wave script. We're gonna call this from the wave manager. But as for right now, we are just gonna have a simple start function, and there we go. So yeah, just like that, we have a start function, and we simply just invoke this function after 2 seconds. Don't worry, we are not gonna use this one as for the last. We are gonna use the wave manager for that. Okay, so for now we have the start wave function, which basically just turn this to true so that we can see just like these things are active. Okay, so the most important thing in here is of course the update function, where we actually do the spawning. Now this is the spawning part, but this is relatively easy to understand. Don't worry about this. So this is pretty simple. If the wave is active, that means the wave is currently active, because well, we are using this boolean. So let's see. What we do here is simply decrease the spawn timer by some time to delta time to just decrease this integer, this float, sorry. In the starting, as you can see, when we start the wave, we set the spawn timer to the spawn interval, which is 2 seconds currently. So the spawn timer gets decreased like 1.8, 1.7, and just keeps on decreasing. And then when it reaches less than 0, when the spawn timer reaches less than 0, we simply spawn the enemy. And when the enemy spawn, we set the spawn timer back to spawn interval, like it's set back to 2 seconds. Okay, then as for the spawn enemy, it's again not that difficult to understand. We just take a randomizer to just randomly instantiate the enemies. And as for the instantiate, where we instantiate? At the transformed position and quaternion.identity, since we don't want any rotations. And then lastly, we just take the enemy movement script, this script, and just take all these waypoints, and then just fill those waypoints with our own waypoints, these ones. And yeah, once the number of enemies spawned is greater than or equal to number of enemies, that means our wave is completed. The number of enemies that have been spawned, our wave is complete. Then we simply just turn this false and set the game object to set active or false. And yeah, there we go. Now we can just save it and open up Unity. Okay, so let's have a empty game object, call it wave, and we can just drag and drop our script to it. There we go. Now let's fill in the waypoints. And now as for the enemy game object, we can just simply make our ship a prefab. There we go, and we can delete it from the scene. And yeah, now we can just simply drag and drop our game object to enemies. And now here's the thing, we can just duplicate it just so that I can show you that the randomizer is working perfectly. So there we go, the rest of the stuff can remain how it is, and let's click on play. Alright, and as you can see, the timer is decreasing and the boats go to the last waypoint and then they return back to the normal one. So let's drag our wave to a little bit back, and yeah, there we go. Okay, so with that script, with the wave script working, we have this last wave manager script. So what this is basically the collection of waves and of course the waypoints, because well we can't go wrong with waypoints. The entire reason why we have waypoints in the wave manager and not in the wave is that so if we change the waypoints in any way, we don't have to change like in every single wave script. We just have to change in the wave manager script, and then all of the waypoints will be changed accordingly. So as you can see in the current wave index, it says -1 because well, when as you can see in the start next wave, and when we invoke the start waves function, you can see we increase the current wave index by 1. So the current wave index goes from -1 to 0, and then the waves dot current wave index dot start wave, and again the start wave function is simply this one. So yeah, we just first in the start function, we just make sure that all the waypoints are assigned to the correct waypoints, and then we just simply start the wave after some time. In like we have this like some 5-second delay before we start the first wave, and then this simply calls this function. Again, it takes a delay, this one, and then we just simply invoke this function, the start wave function. Now what does this, we just need, now this will do one thing, like once we start the wave, it goes to 0th wave and then the wave will start. But once that first wave ends, we need to do something about it, because well, we currently there's no way to actually just go to the next wave. It just stops. So we just need to add one line here, and there we go. So yeah, we just added this small line, and remember that one thing that I was talking about, this delay between delay between waves set by this wave. So this does exactly what the variable says. That's the delay between waves set by this wave. So after this amount of time, the amount of time that the first wave sets, after this time the next wave will start. And so yeah, that's what this basically does. And also I removed the start function because well, we don't need that anymore. And yeah, that is about it. We can just save and head back to Unity. Alright, so let's duplicate all our waves, and we'll have just 4 waves for now. And yeah, we can just change these variables a little bit for each of the waves, and then make sure to change the delay between waves set by this wave as well. So yeah, we can have 5 seconds for this, then have different, and again this can be different for each wave. There we go. Now let's create an empty and call it a wave manager. Let's drag and drop our script to that, and let's drag all our waves to our wave manager, and let's drag all our waypoints to our wave manager. And so yeah, that's mostly about it. We can now just drag and drop all our waves to our wave manager as children, and we can just click on play. Alright, and as for the first wave, you will see that it starts in, yes, there we go, it has started. Ships are being instantiated, and after a couple of seconds, and yes, the wave's now inactive, and there we go, the second wave has started after our prescribed seconds. So yeah, in the next part we will go through how to put these small islands to use, and put maybe some towers on them like cannons and bows, maybe even have perspective visions in them. So yeah, but that's only possible if you sub, drop a like, comment, the usual YouTube thing. Yeah, that's all. Thank you for watching. Cheers and peace.